So the nature of the video is to cipher and distinguish the two mainstream differences between the evangelical side of Anglicanism and the Anglo Catholic side of Anglicanism. And the reason why I want to do this is because, as you all know, the Archbishop recently resigned, Archbishop Justin Welby, from his post, and they are now looking for a replacement. Now, I found out recently that each interim, so each appointment, they alternate between evangelical and Anglo Catholic. So Justin Welby, would you believe, with all his quite flamboyant and opulent vestments, he was actually an evangelical. The next one will actually be an Anglo Catholic. So you've got many dioceses that stretch across the UK, and generally you've got a Anglo Catholic diocese and a evangelical diocese. Now, what's the difference, I suppose, is the question you're wondering, and the difference can be quite nuanced, but fundamentally evangelical tends to be lower church, less emphasis on the sacraments, slightly more emphasis on the gospel, and evangelism, i.e., believers' baptism. There's more, I suppose, more of a drive to be proactive in the community and bring people in. They're a bit of a mishmash when it comes to social justice. I think some evangelical Anglican churches are big on social justice, some aren't, but generally speaking, I would say these days the majority of them are. And with whether they're conservative or liberal, and this is something I found out recently, it's actually very nuanced. So some evangelical Anglicans are liberal and some are conservative, and the way to cipher whether they're one or the two is usually what's preached on the pulpit. So if they go into the sort of save the planet narrative, very sort of left wing, then you know that there's a good chance they're liberal. And it's not even just save the planet, there's other little things they do as well, like for example, in some cases, there's been a real push of LGBT inclusivity. So some of these liberal evangelical churches will have rainbow flags and things like that. So yeah, there is a nuance between whether they're liberal or whether they're conservative, but right now there is a trend towards more and more being liberal. Anglo Catholics, unfortunately, it's the same thing there. Again, you will see preaching on saving the planet, you will see a push of inclusivity, and even in some cases a new phenomenon that's sweeping the country by storm is basically this critical race theory, which is a load of baloney. It's basically like if you're born white, you have more of Adam's guilt than anybody else. I mean, that is so theologically wrong. It's actually racist, but they feel like by doing this it somehow equals the playing field or evens it out. That has no basis. It's nowhere in the Bible does it say that we all have a fair crack at life. I mean, you only have to look at the individuals. We're made by Imago Dei, image of God, and some of us are going to be tall, some short, some skinny, some muscular, some with genetic deficiencies, some with good genetics. It's like some born rich, some born poor. You're never going to get full equality. So this obsession to try and equal everyone out is absolute nonsense. But I've noticed, particularly among the Anglo Catholics, it seems to be a thing that's crept into the church. But no, I always thought Anglo Catholics would be more conservative, because in a lot of parishes, particularly one of parish of Fulham, they don't allow women in ordination. So I thought that was, I guess, a hint that maybe they're on the side of conservative, but that's just to be more in line with Rome, I guess. It's not necessarily to be more conservative. So yeah, they're the two main streams. But like I said, there's a strong possibility it will be an Anglo Catholic, but a liberal Anglo Catholic. I mean, can there be any positive out of this, having an Anglo Catholic appointment? I would say there's few positives, but I do think Anglo Catholics do try, at least doctrinally, have a bit more in line with Rome. Not that they're obliged to at all, because they're not in communion with Rome, but there are strides to sort of like, like for example, anti-abortion, which is obviously a very Roman Catholic doctrine, to the point it's ingrained in their catechesis. And I think the Anglo Catholics also, there is a push for them to be against that and strongly oppose that. So if there's any positive, I would guess it's that. And I think there's more of a push of keeping marriages together in the Anglo Catholic communion. They're sternly against divorce, as are the Roman Catholics. So they don't like remarriage after divorce, even if the person's deceased. So they are by default conservative in that sense, in a doctrinal sense. But sadly, when it comes to social justice, and this whole notion of modernism and inclusivity, they're very much on board with the secular. It certainly appears that way, from what I've seen. I keep an eye on things, and I've even looked at all the candidates and their background. And you'll find a lot of bishops do write-ups and stuff. They're they like to interfere in worldly business. Very often you'll see them, like, I don't know, turn up on like some tabloid newspaper, and there'll be a column, and it'll be talking about things that just don't involve them, like even immigration. And that's another thing that liberals tend to go along with, and it does say biblically that we need nations, and that God supports nations. So, I mean, look at the history of Israel. It's a country that constantly got invaded by different people, and they constantly had to fight to get it back. Now, if God was one who didn't care about immigration, he would have said, "No, don't fight, just let these Babylonians just take over." So yeah, we do have to guard our borders, we do have to be vigilant of terrorism and things like that, and that is very, very, very biblical. Do you want to be a society run by Amaleks, Philistines? Do you want that in modern day? I think it's bad enough, isn't it? We don't want to add to the equation. So yeah, I mean, we're in a bit of a sticky point right now. It's kind of like doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. I think the best thing we can really hope for is a conservative Anglo Catholic, but they are rare. There's not many out of the 10 top candidates. I think only one of them might fit that bill, or two. I'm not going to say names, but we're just going to have to see, really. I mean, it's important, even if you're not an Anglican, because our laws in this country are seeped and entrenched by Christian teaching, and even the Magna Carta arose out of natural law and Christianity. It's, when laws get drafted through in this country, they have to go through the House of Lords, and you have two bishops that stand in the House of Lords. It's like, I feel like if you're going to remove the church, de-established, because Church of England is still the state Church of England, yeah? And if you were to de-establish it as no longer an important institution, then what will happen is things will crumble down afterwards. It will create a slippery slope, because something will have to fill that gap. People forget morality comes from a source, and that source is scripture. It's you only have to look at the Sermon on the Mount, that amazing monologue of Jesus. A monologue that takes over about 5 chapters of the Bible, and it's just incredible. It's like, we need that as humans. We need a building block for our virtues to be steered to an end goal that depicts the teaching of Christ and embodies Christ's teaching. You have to have something that's sustainable, because the way I see it is Christendom, whether you see it as a bad thing or a good thing, it's enabled our societies to last 2,000 years, particularly among Europe. We've kept that culture for such a long time, and every great empire eventually folds. And a sign of the changing of the guard, if you like, is the amount of abortions we're getting now. And all I can say is very similar we had in the Roman Empire before Constantine declared the Milan Edict as Christianity being a state religion that's approved. There were babies killed left, right and centre, babies left on the roadside, babies aborted, babies sacrificed, and it was a horrible sign of the times. That's why there was a crave for something good, and that's why Christianity went to the forefront. It went because morality basically hit the deck, and that's what's going to happen now. Morality is going to hit the deck, and people are going to have nowhere to turn, and they're going to look for something to fill that gap. Some people say Islam. I don't think it will. I don't think Islam fits with the global elites, propaganda of LGBT and all that crap. I think what's going to happen is the gap that will be filled is the gap of hate and animosity. There'll be friction, people fighting each other, and that gap sadly won't be filled. And the only thing that will fill it actually is probably the elite using more oppressive and dystopian tactics to control us and keep us in our place, because that's the end goal. They want us. One of every great theologian across 2,000 years said, that God is love and the ultimate virtue is happiness. And once you've hit that stage of happiness, you are as close as God as can be. But they want to take that away from us. They don't want us to be happy. They want us slaves to society, and they want us to just work, pay tax, rinse our money before we die, inheritance tax, rinse our money after we die, take it from our family. They just want us with nothing. They don't want us to build for the future. They don't want us to build for our children. They don't even want us to have children. The average child rate now has gone less than 2 in England. So the average person now is just 1 kid. That can't grow. That cannot grow a population. That's probably why they've opened borders for immigration, because they know people aren't having children anymore. But they're not thinking long term, because they're flooding the country, especially UK, with immigrants. And what they don't realise is it's not sustainable, because those immigrants will eventually get old. Then we'll be back to square one. We'll be in the same situation where we have an increasingly ageing population. So I'm not saying no immigration. I'm saying let's have controlled immigration for the sake of the greater good. And and Jesus' teaching was all for the greater good. It was always, basically Jesus himself said we are all one in Christ. know, whether you're Gentile, Jew, Greek, barbarian, male, female, slave, free. Jesus broke those boundaries and he said, look, if you can unite under me, there is no division. But if you can't unite under me, then clearly that is the gates of hell. But those gates of hell won't prevail in the church, we know that. So we have to be as wise as serpents and as soft as doves and be ready for the attack. But if we stay faithful to God, we will be victorious. Maybe not on this life, but certainly in the next life. So yeah, be ready for martyrdom, guys. Be ready to put your job on the line, your life on the line, because it's about to get ugly. It's about to get very, very ugly. Anyway, put a like, put a subscribe, and I'll see you soon.